Purport, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, text 25. Only a person who is fully in Krishna consciousness can be said to be engaged in welfare work for all living entities. When a person is actually in the knowledge that Krishna is the fountainhead of everything, then he acts in that spirit. He acts for everyone. The sufferings of humanity are due to forgetfulness of Krishna as the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor, and the supreme friend. Therefore, to act to revive this consciousness within the entire human society is the highest welfare work. One cannot be engaged in such first-class welfare work without being liberated in the Supreme. A Krishna conscious person has no doubt about the supremacy of Krishna. He has no doubt because he is completely freed from all sins. This is the state of divine love. A person engaged only in ministering to the physical welfare of human society cannot factually help anyone. Temporary relief of the external body and the mind is not satisfactory. The real cause of one's difficulties in the hard struggle of life for life may be found in one's forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Lord. When a man is fully conscious of his relationship with Krishna, he is actually a liberated soul, although he may be in the material tabernacle. Thus, one's a wonderful transcendental Bhakti Vedanta purport. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarini Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Jivasari Gauravakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we have been studying the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Now we are getting close to the end of the 5th chapter. We have spent several weeks in studying the 5th chapter. As we have seen many times before, the 5th chapter is divided into 4 sections with the acronyms STEP. S stands for stay in the world, how one can stay in the world and still be renounced in work. And then T stands for 3 doers, that I am not the only doer. In fact, my desires are seen by the super soul within my heart, and he manipulates matter to implement the desires that I have, to carry out the desires if I'm eligible for it. So there are 3 doers involved, and we studied that. And then for the last several verses, we have been studying the section called Equal Vision. So this Equal Vision, there have been many verses that we have been talking about, and today's and tomorrow will be the last verse in this section. And then the last section is called Peace, or Peace Formula. So you'll see that as well in the coming weeks. So this verse that we just saw, Labhante Brahma Nirvanam, belongs to the section called Equal Vision. And let us take a closer look at this verse. Labhante Brahma Nirvanam Rishayah Kshina Kalmashaha Chinna Dvaidha Yatatmanaha Sarva Bhuta Hiterataha. So this verse is a very important verse in Bhagavad Gita. Some verses, like the one that we saw some weeks back, what is that? The 21st verse. The Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkhayonaya evate adi antavanta kaunteya na teshu ramate buddha. Verses like that, they have to be memorized completely, and we should try to see those verses in our everyday life by remembering the complete verse completely. You cannot, there is no compromise to be made in those kind of verses. And there is another verse which at the end of this chapter that's coming up, it's also similar. You have to remember every word in that verse. You cannot forget anything. In today's verse also, of course, in Bhagavad Gita, there is nothing that is worth forgetting. But sometimes we are unable to remember everything in Bhagavad Gita, right? Even though we have studied the verse, we've chanted it so many times today. But tomorrow, if you ask, we will not remember this verse. So, but still, from this verse, if you were to remember, please remember the word Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. There's a key word in this verse, most important part of this verse, and is also the topic of today's class, the universal welfare worker. Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. So, Labhante Brahma Nirvanam, the word Brahma Nirvanam has been seen on last week also, and it is appearing in today's verse also, and it will appear in tomorrow's verse also. There are three consecutive verses in which Brahma Nirvanam comes. Brahma Nirvanam has also come in the second chapter, towards the end. The last verse of second chapter also talks about Brahma Nirvanam. So it's translated as liberation in the Supreme. Achieves liberation in the Supreme, or is already liberated. So this Brahma Nirvanam has two aspects to it. One is that is achieving the Supreme at the end of the life, achieving the Supreme, which means attaining, going back home, back to Godhead. That is Brahma Nirvanam. And Prabhupada explains that execution of devotional service, execution of pure devotional service, unalloyed devotional service is also Brahma Nirvanam. So Brahma Nirvanam is both execution of unalloyed devotional service in our present material body. So that is a stage which is an already liberated stage, but it is in the material world, while Prabhupada says in the purport, while being part of the material tabernacle. So that is also Brahma Nirvanam. And at the end of while quitting our body, when a pure devotee or a person who has achieved perfection in that life goes back home, back to Godhead, that is also Brahma Nirvanam. They are non-different. So Brahma Nirvanam has both these aspects. So Labhante Brahma Nirvanam. So such a person achieves liberation in Supreme. What kind of person? That is described. Rishayaha Kshina Kalmashaha. Rishayaha is translated as those who are active within. It's a very interesting translation. Usually you have seen Rishayaha as Rishi, sage. It's a sage. Rishayaha Uchuhu. We have seen in Srimad Bhagavatam many times. Rishayaha Uchuhu, the sages of Naimisharanya said. So Rishi or Rishayaha are sages. Those sages, that's how you normally think. But there is a very interesting translation given here in the word for word meaning. Those who are active within. Because this term, active within, has also been used in the past in this section of equal vision in previous verses. So these sages they are not interested, they are not interacting with their objects of senses, external objects of senses. They are not acting with an external object of senses, but rather they are active in understanding and living a life that is consistent with the understanding of their self, in relation to the Supreme. So, understanding of the self in relation to Supreme means that one is active in discharging the duties in that relationship. See, so much meaning is packed into this one word, Rishayaha, in the word-to-word translation, that a person who is active within means, first of all, he has to understand who he is, that he's a spirit soul, not the body. Then he has to understand that the spirit soul is part and parcel of Krishna. That there is identity of the spirit soul in relationship with Krishna. And then he will discharge the duty that is consistent with that relationship. Duty within the relationship. Just as a husband and wife, they're married and then they live in their separate homes. That is not marriage. That is not a relationship. When one discharges a duty of husband and wife, then it is considered as marriage. That is a working, functional marriage, functional relationship. So in any functional relationship, there is activities in that relationship. So these Rishayahas, they are active within, because the activity of the soul with the super soul has nothing to do with the external world. It has nothing to do with the external circumstances around us. So all of this is packed within this one word, Rishayaha. Kshina Kalmashaha, those who are devoid of sins. Kshina Kalmashaha. We have seen before also this word, Nirdhuta Kalmashaha, Kshina Kalmashaha. There is a verse, Ye Anye Aravindaksha Vimuktamaninaha. Thus, what is the exact word? The next line. Ashad Bhava. Before that, one word is there. Tattva, Tvai Ashad Bhava. Avishuddha Buddhayaha. Avishuddha Buddhayaha. Ye Anye Aravindaksha Vimuktamaninaha. Tvai Ashad Bhava. Avishuddha Buddhayaha. So this Avishuddha Buddhayaha means polluted intelligence. Avishuddha Buddhaya is polluted intelligence. We'll talk a little bit more about that little later. But this is just to draw a contrast with this particular characteristic, with this Kshina Kalmashaha, devoid of all sins. Yesham tu antagata papam jananam punyakarmanam te dvandva moha nirmukta bhajante mam dhridavrataha. So this people who are achieving or qualified to achieve liberation, they are completely devoid of sins. Antagatam papam, yesham tu antagata papam. And the sinful tendency is there in the heart, kalmashaha. Avishuddha buddhayaha, because of the polluted intelligence, there is a propensity to commit sins. So when a person who has no propensity to commit sin and is devoid of all sinful reactions, both. So no propensity to commit sin and devoid of all past sinful reactions. So these people who are active within and who are completely torn off of duality, vividhaha, we have already seen many verses before how the various dualities have been discussed, honor, dishonor, and happiness and distress. So all these dualities are of no consequence to such persons because activity of the soul has no correlation, it has no dependency on external circumstances. And those who are engaged in self-realization, yata atmanaha, such people, what do? They engage in sarva bhuta hite rataha. Hite rataha, that is engaged in welfare work. For whom? Is it for a section of people? Maybe children, maybe it is impoverished children, or maybe it is recovering addicts with some rehabilitation centers, or is it just for, because we see all these kind of activities in the world. Some people are very, very passionate about taking care of the impoverished children to make sure they have good education, good clothing, midday meal scheme, etc. And then there are others who are passionate about helping perhaps older people by constructing old age homes, by taking care of poor people regardless of their age, or maybe minorities, maybe those who are oppressed. Or is it certain species? Some people we see they are dog lovers. Wherever there is a dog, they'll go rescue the dog. If there is some particular animal that they are very passionate about, they'll go and rescue that animal. So is it that kind of work that is being talked about here? No. Sarva bhuta hiterataha. All living entities without distinction. Every living entity. So is it possible like this? Just imagine the scale and the scope of this work. Just in my hand, there are millions of living entities. Just in my hand. It is said, just in the tongue, there are so many microbial organisms. And in this room, it is countless number of organisms, living entities that are there. In every molecule of air, there are germs, there are microbes. How is it possible to do welfare for all living entities? Is it even possible? Yes. This verse says, yes. And there are such people. And such people become eligible for labhante brahma nirvanam. They achieve liberation in the Supreme. So the translation says, those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from the sins, from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme. So let us just look at some of these verses in the past in this section where this grand vision is being talked about, this equal vision that we are seeing in today's verse, where we are talking about welfare for all living entities, equality of vision. We have seen in the previous verses also. So I have divided these verses in this current section of equal vision into three parts: do, be, who. Do, be, who. So do is, what is it that Krishna is talking about doing? And then when that is done, what does that person become? And who is Krishna describing? What kind of a person is he describing? So if you see just at a glance, verses 15 to 25, and next verse I have not put because we will study that tomorrow. So I don't want to spoil the surprise for you. When you see those tomorrow, you can be attentive and you can yourself figure out what is the do, be, and who of tomorrow's verse. But up to today, whatever verses we have covered, that there is a theme in the kind of person that is being described. So you see in the 17th verse where the section starts, in the purport, Prabhupada starts by describing a fully Krishna conscious person. So it's being talking about Krishna conscious person. Tat buddhaya tad atmanas tannishtha tat parayanaha. Fix one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge in Supreme. That is the 17th verse. And it's being describing the qualities of a Krishna conscious person. And what does that person do? We'll come to that. But then in the 18th verse, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Suni Chaiva Supake Chaiva Panditaha Samadarshinaha. Panditaha, and that is translated as humble sage. And then in 19th verse, it is said, flawless like Brahman. That is there in the translation, flawless like Brahman. So that is the person that has been talked about. And then 20th verse, self-realized person. 21st verse, liberated person, self-realized person. 22nd verse, Buddha. This is that yehi samsparshaja bhoga na teshu ramate buddha, wise man. So intelligent person, wise man, both these words are used in the translation. In the 23rd verse, the term self-realized is used in the translation, and in the purport also the word Goswami is used. The self-realized is also used. 24th verse, perfect mystic, and 25th verse, fully in Krishna consciousness. Today in purport we'll go through this again, but purport starts off by saying a person in full Krishna consciousness, or a person who's fully in Krishna consciousness. So you see, this is a description of, because in different sections of Bhagavad Gita, it is useful to know what is being talked about. Who is Krishna talking about? Because in some places, Krishna is talking about persons in different stages of consciousness. Not in entire Bhagavad Gita is talking about a pure devotee. It's not like that. For example, there are places in 3rd chapter, Saha Yajna Prajasrishta Puro Vacha Prajapatihi. And then there are some verses after that, how it is said that in the beginning of creation, the Lord sent forth, along with the living entities, also set forth sacrifices. And by performance of sacrifices, one can become purified. But then the people there, they are conditioned living entities. That's what they're being talked about. And then there are also a description of how the people who desirous of material benefits worship the devatas. And then the devatas, being pleased with the sacrifices, award them with temporary benefits. And by this parasparam, by this mutual understanding, they both benefit and they gradually advance. So there is a description like that. Then there are descriptions of various stages of advancement, how one can renounce the fruit of one's action and become peaceful. Simply not enjoying the fruit of action, but just giving it off to somebody. That is also being talked about. So there are in different parts of Bhagavad Gita, different consciousness, different kinds of person or exemplary person has been described. Different kind of persons have been described, and what are their characteristics. If based on those characteristics, when they do something, what happens? Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajantyante kalevaram. Like that. So whatever state of mind one has at the time of quitting the body, one attains that. So that is not pure devotee. But antakale cha mam eva smaran muktva kalevaram, that is pure devotee, one who is able to remember Krishna at the time of quitting the body. So different parts of Bhagavad Gita, they describe different things. So it's important for us to understand the context that we are in this section is describing a person who is in full Krishna consciousness. a perfect mystic, a person who has attained perfection. That is what is being talked about. Now, does it mean that we cannot learn anything from this? Because after all, we are not in that stage. We are in the neophyte stage. We are advancing. We are trying to advance. Does it mean that we cannot learn anything from this? There is something for us to learn. Because a person in that perfectional stage, what it means is that that person understands what we need to do in order to achieve to that stage. So by understanding the exalted position of such a person, by understanding the qualities of their work, by their own nature and the qualities, we can appreciate the instructions that they give for us. And we can appreciate the importance of the work that they do. Because we have a lot of preconceived ideas about what is considered to be desirable, what is good, what is bad, because we have been conditioned like that from childhood. We have been taught, we have been in school, and various social messages have been bombarded upon us from all directions. So it's a very deep rooted, and even from previous lifetimes, lifetime after lifetime, we have preconceived notions. And an essence of all those notions stays with us when the body is changed. Just as there's aroma that comes in a garden, and it flows, the aroma floats in the air, and the aroma contains a mixture of all the scents of all the different flowers in the garden. Right? In a garden, there may be roses, there may be lotus, there may be jasmine. And now imagine a garden with all these different flowers. So what happens is the aroma that comes from the garden, and the aroma goes into all the neighborhood areas. Correct? Now, from that, in that aroma, you cannot specifically make out what is this flower, what is that flower. You cannot make out. It's an essence of all the different aromas. Similarly, it is described that our desires at the time of death, whatever we have, the state of mind, the combination of all our desires, it also comes into our current life. And that compounded with all the new messaging, new social inputs that we get, which we assimilate wholeheartedly, we accept all these. And then because of all this, when we are presented with the instructions of a pure devotee, we are unable to process that, because we are unable to appreciate that. This is why it is very important to study these carefully and relate them to the qualities and the work of a pure devotee, and then begin to appreciate that work. Then, with greater attention and greater submission, wholeheartedly, we would be enthusiastically, we would be able to take part in the mission of such a pure devotee. So in this section, all these different verses, they are simply describing a perfect person, flawless like Brahman, self-realized person. And then what kind of qualities have been described? Neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant, nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant. Unbewildered like that, not attracted to material sense pleasure, always in trance, not in contact with material senses, not taking delight in them, tolerating the urges of material senses, check the force of desire and anger. Happiness is within, active, and rejoices within. So we saw this in the last Sunday, active within. And so in today's verse also, we saw how Rishaya is translated as one who is active within, because it's a continuation from the previous verse. And then today's verse, beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, minds. So these are the qualities of the person, a person who's fully in Krishna consciousness. Is completely beyond the dualities that arise from doubts. And the mind is engaged within, always busy working for the welfare of all living entities, free from all sins. So let us take a closer look at the purport. See what are although there are many points in the purport, I just chose some 3 points that highlight the topic for today. So Prabhupada describes in this purport, what is the root cause of suffering? And then he describes that if you understand the root cause of suffering, then you'll also understand that the physical welfare or welfare of the body of the people is not really helping anyone. It doesn't actually help that person. Maybe temporarily something it gives, but it is not real help. What is real help then? The actual welfare work for all living entities, that has been described in today's purport. So let's take a closer look. Root cause of suffering, Prabhupada says, the sufferings of the humanity are due to forgetfulness of Krishna as a supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor, and the supreme friend. So this is a verse that is quoting, Prabhupada is quoting a verse here. And then saying that because you don't understand that verse, understand the meaning of that verse, you don't implement it in your life, that is why suffering comes. Forgetfulness of Krishna as what? Forgetfulness of Krishna as what? Because somebody may say, no, no, I remember Krishna. All your people who are fanatic followers of Krishna are always jumping up and down. I know very well Krishna. So many people in the world are. So that is not being remembering Krishna. So remembering Krishna does not mean remembering, even that of course people are not able to do. But favorably remembering Krishna means understanding Krishna's position as a supreme enjoyer. Bhoktaram yakya tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam gyatva mam shantim richati. So Bhoktaram as a supreme enjoyer, Krishna as a supreme enjoyer. Sarvaloka maheshwaram, supreme proprietor. Suhridam sarvabhutana, supreme friend. So these qualities, these characteristics of Krishna, Krishna himself is describing. And you will see that in coming weeks, you will see that particular verse where Krishna is describing that. But because we forget this position of Krishna and we think that, no, I don't think there is any such person. Actually, I am the enjoyer. I'm the supreme enjoyer, not just that I'm the enjoyer of my own efforts, but I'm the supreme enjoyer of everybody's efforts. Therefore, everyone's effort should be spent, everyone's effort should be directed towards pleasing me. And when there is a disturbance in that, we become disturbed. So suffering happens. So suffering of humanity is due to forgetfulness of Krishna as supreme enjoyer. But contrast that, just look at our position. Because we are thinking that I am the enjoyer, not only that I'm the enjoyer, that I am the supreme enjoyer, we think like that. That's why we expect honor from the society. We expect people to serve us in different ways, recognize us, and glorify us, not only in front of us, but also behind our back. If somebody glorifies us in front of us and talks negatively about us behind our back, it disturbs us. So we expect complete total surrender from everybody in front of us, all around us. So that is the meaning of us thinking that we are the supreme enjoyer. And this is the root cause of humanity suffering. So if somebody is there and somebody is suffering because of hunger or because of impoverishment or poor health, but what is the cause behind his suffering? If we don't understand the cause and simply give him some relief for a band-aid for his wound on top, that is not going to help. Previously, we have seen an example of how a wound can be treated. Let us say that there is an itch or a boil and somebody simply blows, then it doesn't help, right? And if you itch it, it becomes worse. If you itch that, it becomes worse, right? Scratch. If you scratch the itch, it becomes worse. If you apply a band-aid, it becomes worse. It is slightly improved. So there are different degrees of treatment. So understanding the root cause of that boil, if you treat that boil in the proper way, it goes away from the root. So the suffering of humanity, the first reason that is given by Prabhupada is because we are forgetting Krishna as the supreme enjoyer. We are trying to enjoy. And the supreme proprietor, because we are thinking that we are the supreme proprietor. So if somebody is a supreme enjoyer, what kind of welfare he can do? Let us say that somebody thinks that I'm actually a very charitable person. And I like to help people in distress. But he's thinking that he's the enjoyer. Where is the question of him doing help for other people? So any help that he does, actually is looking for enjoyment for himself. Right? So he cannot do any welfare work. The supreme proprietor. So if somebody is a supreme proprietor, he is trying to think that Krishna is not the supreme proprietor. There is no such person who is a supreme proprietor. I am the proprietor of what I have. And in fact, even things that other people have, I should try to get it. I should try to make it mine. I have so much wealth today. Tomorrow it should become so much. These are my enemies. They should be destroyed in this particular way. And that way I can get all the wealth to myself. This is the symptom of this is the thinking of a person who does not accept Krishna as supreme proprietor. Or a person who wants everything for himself at one level or the other. What kind of welfare work can he do? What kind of a real relief can he give to somebody? Because whatever position he does not have, even if you give something to that person, actually you are thinking in your mind that everything here should belong to me. So very grudgingly there is some help that is given, right? So it's not the highest welfare work. And then supreme friend. Now Krishna says he is a supreme friend, but then humanity is not accepting that. People are not accepting that. And now consider the situation that you think that, no, actually I'm a dog lover. I help dogs. But Or somebody may say, elephants are endangered, I'll work for the welfare of elephants. Or whales are an endangered species, or whales should be protected. Or even among the human people, I will say that I'll take care of all these people in this area who are maybe suffering from poverty or something like that. So please, consider me your friend. I am your friend. The politicians will often say this, that I serve this population, people in my constituency, and you'll always find a friend in me. This is what they say. But we have seen how even a politician, when their term is over, they would not look back. They would not do. Even a sincere politician who is doing service in the best of his ability, at some point he becomes old, he dies. So what happens to all the people there? Where is the friendship? Their friendship is gone. It is only lasting as long as the body is there, and that too, the ability to help the person is very limited. And what help can we give if we don't understand the problem of that person? Let us say that there is a person who is suffering from some disease. Let us say jaundice, or diabetes, or high blood pressure, or something. And he is also hungry. He wants to have some food, and he does not have the means to get that food. And you think that you are a friend, and you give him some sweet, or you give him some other food which is not good for him. That is not good, right? Because you're actually harming him. Or let us say that there is a person on the street who is very hungry, and there is a passerby who looks at that hungry person and says, "Oh, this person is hungry. I ordered 2 or 3 hamburgers. Let me give one hamburger to this person." And everybody will appreciate, "Oh, nice, very nice. So such a charitable person is, his food is giving 50% to the beggar. Look at how charitable he is. His heart is melts on seeing the poor people." But actually, when that person eats a hamburger, is it good for him? He gets implicated in the sin of killing the animal. But the person who's giving that food has no idea about that. He has no idea that whether it's a hamburger or an ordinary burger, whatever food you give him, and he eats that ordinary food, which is bhoga, not offered, not sacrificed to the Lord, actually is implicating him in further and further sins, which is the root cause of his suffering. All the sins he has committed from all the previous life, he's suffering for that. Not only that, we are not mitigating that, but you're actually making it worse. So what kind of a friend is this? So we should accept that the instructions of Krishna, that Krishna is a supreme enjoyer, Krishna is supreme proprietor, Krishna is a supreme friend. A person who understands this perfectly actually is qualified to do real welfare work. Prabhupada says, the real cause of one's difficulty is in the hard struggle for life. See, Prabhupada is acknowledging, yes, struggle for life. Prakritisthani karshati. There is struggle for life. Bhavesmin klishyamananam avidya kama karma bhi. So there is a hard struggle for life that has been described in the literature. But it may be found, the root cause, the real cause may be found in one's forgetful of his relationship with the Supreme Lord. So this is the real cause of suffering. Without understanding the disease, if you are trying to treat the disease, will it be helpful? It happens often. You go to a medical clinic, especially in America, it happens a lot. It happens everywhere. You go and walk in and you say that I'm having such a disease. Then without asking any further questions, or without truly understanding the holistic system or the problems in the body, if somebody suddenly immediately starts prescribing the medicines, will it going to help? It's not going to help. And usually what will happen is that the patient who's a little bit intelligent will not take those medicines, whatever is given, because it has been given without fully understanding the disease. So one has to understand the root cause. If you want to be doing highest welfare work, if you want to help somebody who's doing highest welfare work, we have to first of all diagnose what is the real cause of suffering in humanity. Why are people suffering? Why are these animals and creatures that are there all around us, why are they living in such abominable condition? In this kind of a life form, you see all this strange kind of life forms that are there. That very, very strange kind of life forms where you will not even understand why such a life was created. But why are they like that? Why are they suffering like that with no understanding of their situation? So we have to understand that first. And then when you understand that the real cause of their suffering is actually their forgetfulness of Krishna, and that forgetfulness of Krishna is inside, it is not in the external problems that they're having, then it becomes very obvious that physical welfare, it does not really help anyone. A person engaged in ministering to the physical welfare of the human society cannot factually help anyone. Temporary relief of the external body and the mind is not satisfactory. Prabhupada is saying this, not satisfactory. So, so you'll see that people who are hovering on the mental platform, who are not truly Krishna conscious, who don't understand, who don't accept Krishna's transcendental position, do not accept his dominion over everything that may be, do not accept him as a supreme friend. Even if they receive or they give some help, some mental peace, maybe they teach some group of people, a little bit more sophisticated help would be to bring a group of people and teach them some meditation techniques, some physical therapy, yoga, or something like that, which can give some little better relief from the pain that the person is suffering. But it's not satisfactory. Temporary relief is not satisfactory. If a person is drowning in the ocean and there's a boat that goes near that, imagine the Titanic that sank and 2,000 people are in the water, or 3,000, I don't know exactly the count, number of people who were in the water. 2,000, 3,000 people. It's a big boat, a lot of people, everybody went into the water. And now there's a rescue ship coming after several hours. Rescue ship came because it's somewhere far away, it is broken down, hitting an ice ledge, and the ship is cracked open, water has gone inside, everybody is in the water and people are drowning. And then there is a ship, rescue boats are coming. The rescue boats come. Imagine that instead of rescuing the person, they just take the dress of that person and rescue the dress. And the person is still in water. What will be that? It will be absurd. It will be absurd, unthinkable. Correct? Unthinkable. Actually, in Titanic, many people sank. Many people were saved also. And they were saved because, not because the dress was saved, because the whole body, the person was lifted and put in the boat. That's how they were saved. So actually, this body is like a dress. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya. So in that verse it is said, right, this body is like a dress. Just as you give up an old dress, you take up a new dress. So this body is compared to a dress. So if you only put wounds on the body, it is like saving the dress of a drowning man. It's not of any use, not really help. So Prabhupada says that actual welfare work for all living entities can only be done by a person who is fully in Krishna consciousness. Only such a person can be said to be engaged in the welfare work for all living entities, real welfare work. Only a person in full Krishna consciousness can be said to be engaged in the welfare work. So just note this, read the sentence one more time. Only a person who is fully engaged, fully in Krishna consciousness can be said to be engaged in welfare work for all living entities. See what is the hidden meaning here? It's not talking about that only a fully Krishna conscious person can do welfare work and that such welfare work is greatest. It's not like that. Let's read it again. Only a person who is fully in Krishna consciousness can be said to be engaged in the highest welfare work. In other words, being fully Krishna conscious is the actual engagement of welfare work. It's revolutionary. We would never think about it like this. That being fully in Krishna consciousness is actually the highest welfare work. When a person is actually in the knowledge that Krishna is a fountainhead of everything, then when he acts in that spirit, he acts for everyone. When a person wants to have a relationship with a sibling, with a brother, let's say you want to have a relationship with your brother. It is often said, right? Brothers, bhaichara, brotherhood. So brotherhood is talked about, but can there be a brotherhood without understanding the father? If you don't know who your father is, if you don't know that you have the same father, where is the question of brotherhood? And the moment you understand that you have the same father, then automatically your brotherhood becomes strong. There's no need to make an extra endeavor. And that relationship is pure relationship because you understand that you have the same common father. So a person who's in full Krishna consciousness, he is working to please his father. Father is pleased when all his children are pleased, are comfortable. They are saved from danger. If there is a family in which there is a child who is in great danger, suffering badly, and there is another child who is comfortably placed, and he does nothing to help his brother, will the father be happy? Father will not be happy. In a family, children are meant to help each other. That's what makes the father happy. If collaboratively they work together so that all the children are happy, that makes the father happy. So naturally, a person who is in full Krishna consciousness understands this fact that Supreme Lord is a Bija Pradapita. He is a seed-giving father for all the living entities, and therefore in his vision there's equal vision. Panditaha Samadarshinaha. Suni Chaya Swapakecha Panditaha Samadarshinaha. So this equality of vision naturally brings about welfare for that person, because welfare for that person has to be understood and is understood by such a pure devotee as being reviving that person's connection with his father. Imagine there's a person who is struggling for survival, very, very poor, struggling to make his ends meet. And but he's actually the lost son of a very rich father. Lost son of a very rich father. But he's completely forgotten. He has no idea. In childhood, in some mela, in some fair, he got separated. And he doesn't know his father. And then the rest of his life is suffering. Somebody who knows that, hey, you are father of such and such a person. Did you know this? Immediately all his problems are solved. Whereas somebody else may give him some food for one meal. Somebody may try to give him a job. Somebody may try to teach him yoga. Somebody may try to teach him meditation. Somebody may try to teach him some other means of livelihood. This all struggle. If you simply remind him that, have you forgotten that you have such a rich father? Why are you struggling like this? And introduces him back to the father. All problems are solved. So a fully Krishna conscious person acts in this way to re-establish the lost, the forgotten relationship with Krishna for all the living entities, including animals, including creatures, all the moving, non-moving beings, everybody. So that's why Prabhupada says, therefore, to act, to revive this consciousness within the entire human society is the highest welfare work. One cannot be engaged in such first-class welfare work without being liberated in the Supreme. A Krishna conscious person has no doubt about the supremacy of Krishna. He has no doubt because he is completely freed from all sins. That is the state of divine love. When a man is fully conscious of his relationship with Krishna, he is actually a liberated soul, although he may be in the material tabernacle. What is that verse? Jivan muktasa uchyate. Hare iha yasya harer dasye nikhilasu avasthasu jivan muktasa uchyate. Second line. Kayena manasa gira. Iha yasya harer dasye. Kayena manasa gira. Karmana manasa gira. Nikhilasu avasthasu jivan muktasa uchyate. Nikhilasu api avasthasu. So a person who is with full activities, his body, his mind, when his person is acting as a servant of the Lord, then even though he is in the material tabernacle, in the material world, he is surrounded by matter, but such a person is considered Jivan Mukta Sauchyate, fully liberated. Such a person is already a liberated soul. So this is a purport. There is a very interesting, there are two things, maybe take 5-10 more minutes to give these two other descriptions. One appears in Chaitanya Charitamrita, a conversation between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Namacharya Haridas Thakur. Namacharya Haridas Thakur ki jai. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he asks one day to Namacharya Haridas Thakur, very, very wonderful episode. We should try to meditate upon this and remember this when we see our Nitai Gauranga deities and take darshan of these deities. If there is this episode is in the back of our mind, it creates a mood of wonderment about what happened here. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he asks Haridas Thakur that he says, Haridasa, Kali Kale Yavana Apara, Go Brahmane Himsa Kare, Mahadurachar. My dear Haridas Thakur, in this age of Kali, most people are bereft of Vedic culture. and therefore they are called Yavanas. They are concerned only with killing cows and Brahminical culture. In this way, they all engage in sinful acts. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is describing the qualities of the age of Kali. Most people are bereft of Vedic culture and therefore they're called Yavanas. Yavana is not a caste. Anybody who's bereft of Vedic culture is called a Yavana. And such people are inimical to cows. They want to kill the cows and they want to destroy the Brahminical culture. So what happens because of this? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Iha sabar kon mate, hai be nistar, tahar hetu na dekhiye, e dukha apar. How will these Yavanas be delivered? To my great unhappiness, I do not see any way. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is expressing, e dukha apar. He's expressing deep distress on the state of the people in the Kali Yuga. These Yavanas were just killing the cows. Just see, Krishna is Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha. So Krishna is somebody who is particularly favorable for protection of cows, cow protection, and Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha in preserving the Brahminical culture, in advancing the Brahminical culture. This is what Krishna wants. But in the Kali Yuga, there are people who are killing the cows that Krishna wants to protect. They are destroying the Brahminical culture. But what Krishna wants, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, particularly in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he has come in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what's his mood? He is distressed, dukkha apar, on the fallen condition of these Yavanas. See, he is not angry at them and not trying to kill them. He is feeling distressed upon their condition. And he is asking Namacharya Haridas Thakur, what can be done? I'm so distressed. Then Haridas Thakur says, please don't be distressed like this. He tries to console him. And then he says something wonderful, that these Yavanas, they are used to saying harama. There is a word in Hindi word, haram. It's used as a slang. It's used to describe something abominable. Haram, haram. They'll keep saying this. So essentially they use these expletives like this haram. But Haridas Thakur says, this harama actually has ha. Ha ha Prabhu Nityananda, like this. The word ha means oh, and then Rama, oh Rama. There are devotees, impure devotees, who in ecstasy will say, oh Rama, ha ha Rama. And then the Yavana is saying Harama. They are both chanting Rama. The word Rama is so powerful that even by chanting Ha Rama, that Yavana, who is a cow killer and killer of Brahminical culture, they get purified. So please don't be anxious. Such wonderful power of the holy name. The chanting of the Lord's holy name, Amacharya Haridas Thakur says, to indicate, the chanting of the Lord's holy name, to indicate something other than the Lord, is an instance of Nama Bhasa. Nama Abhasa Aparadha. Nama Bhasa Aparadha is that actually, when you say Ha Rama, Rama, that means the Supreme Lord. But then to indicate something else is an aparadha, it's an offense. Nama Bhasa, it is Nama Bhasa. But even when holy name is chanted in this way, the transcendental power is not destroyed. The power is not destroyed. So even when somebody chants the words with Nama Bhasa, still the power is not destroyed. And even a mlecha who is killed by the tusk of a boar and who cries in distress again and again, Ha Rama, attains liberation. What to speak then of those who chant the holy name with veneration and faith? And then he gives the example of Ajamila, how he just took the word, he had a sinful life, but just once he uttered the holy name and he got liberated. And then he gives one very interesting further discount, very, very, very unique quality of a holy name. That this holy name, even when it is split and there is a separation between them, still it is effective. Still it is effective. And there is an example that is given. I don't remember the exact example. But let us say that there is a word that starts with Ra and then Raja. That is example, one of the examples given is Raja. And then the second word starts with a ma. Um, Masika or something like that. Raja Masika. So Raja Masika, Ra, Ma. These two sounds, Ra and Ma, they are not together, right? Because there are syllables in between. But even when they're separated like this, the word Rama does not lose its power. Still, a person gets the same benefit of chanting Rama. It's so powerful. This is the power of chanting the holy name. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that if a devotee once utters the holy name of the Lord, or it penetrates his mind or enters his ear, which is the channel of oral reception, that holy name will certainly deliver him from material bondage, whether vibrated properly or improperly, with correct or incorrect grammar, or properly joined or vibrated in separate parts, is what I was just talking about. But Prabhupada gives a further clarification here, by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gives an actual explanation for this, that holy name, and it's there in here also, in Chaitanya Charitamrita also it is there. The holy name should not be chanted with material desire. When that is done, it takes much longer to take effect. So when a person is chanting with material desire, that kind of chanting is diluting the effect of that. So offenseless chanting is required. Inadvertent chanting is fine. Unknowingly, if somebody chants, let's say somebody has no idea about the power of holy name and just chanting unknowingly, unoffensively, without any desire, nothing, just chanting without knowing what it is, it will have effect on that person. For example, animals. Animals have no material desire as such. They are just instinctive, driven by their own instinct. And they hear the holy name. It is offenseless. There is no offense the animal is doing against the holy name. It has full effect on the animal. But if we have material desires and we are chanting the holy name with material desires, the effect will be delayed. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asks that on this earth, there are many living entities. Some are moving and some are non-moving. What is the example of a moving? Animals. Non-moving? Trees, plants, shrubs. What will happen to the trees, plants, insects, and other living entities? How will they be delivered from material bondage? They are not able to chant the holy name. How will they be delivered from material bondage? Then Haridas Thakur replies, the deliverance of all moving and non-moving living entities takes place only by your mercy. You have already granted this mercy and delivered them. You have loudly chanted Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and everyone, moving or non-moving, has benefited by hearing it. My Lord, the moving entities who have heard your loud Sankirtana have already been delivered from bondage to the material world. And after non-moving living entities like trees hear it, there is an echo, right? So if you chant in the forest, Hare Krishna, you'll see echo from the trees. But Namacharya Haridas Thakur says, actually, it's not an echo. It is a kirtana of the non-living entities. All this, although inconceivable, is possible only by your mercy. When loud chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra is performed all over the world by those who follow in your footsteps, all living entities, moving and non-moving, dance in ecstatic devotional love. My dear Lord, all the incidents, and then he quotes about how when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was traveling through the forests of Jharkhand, how all the tigers and the elephants and the peacock and the deer, they were all dancing together by hearing the holy name, by hearing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chant the holy name. They became in ecstatic love, and they started dancing. And they forgot that tiger is going to eat the deer. Completely forgot. They were dancing together. So this mercy, Namo Mahadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate, this incarnation of the Lord is most merciful. Patita Pavana Hetu Tavayavatara. So this incarnation of the Lord the Lord has incarnated as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as mercy incarnation. Patita Pavana. It is just to deliver the fallen soul. And our mood should be that I am the most fallen person. Mosama Patita Prabhu Na Paibe Ara. You cannot find somebody else. Nobody else more qualified than me as a most fallen person. So this episode of there is more very interesting conversation how Haridas Thakur says that all these people will be fully delivered by your chanting. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, but what happens if everybody is delivered? Universe becomes empty. Then Haridas Thakur says, Arey, that will happen, don't worry. But there are many other living entities who, because of their past material desires, you will again populate the world. Just as Lord Ramachandra did when he took everybody from Ayodhya back to his spiritual abode. The Supreme Lord Krishna, when he appeared as Krishna, he took everybody from Mathura Vrindavan to his abode. Similarly, Lord Chaitanya is also taking all the entire universe through the chanting of holy name. But he'll again repopulate it. So like this is mercy incarnation of the Lord. And Namacharya Haridas Thakur is saying that all those who are the followers in the footsteps of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when they vibrate the holy name, then the whole, all the living entities get benefited. There is one more interesting section in Nectar of Devotion, and with this I'll stop. In the first chapter of Nectar of Devotion, there is a description of what is considered auspicious by Rupa Goswami. So I'll just read some sentences from that. Srila Rupa Goswami has given a definition of auspiciousness. He says, okay, I think I have not shared, I'll share the screen. He says that actual auspiciousness means welfare activities for people, all the people of the world. At present moment, groups of people are engaged in welfare activities in terms of society, community, or nation. There is even an attempt to form the United Nations for world help activity. But due to shortcomings of the limited national activities, such a general mass welfare program for the whole world is not practically possible. Krishna consciousness movement, however, is so nice that it can render the highest benefit to the entire human race. Everyone can be attracted by this movement and everyone can feel the result. Therefore, Rupa Goswami and other learned scholars agree that a broad propaganda program for Krishna consciousness movement of devotional service all over the world is the highest humanitarian welfare activity. And then there's a quotation from Padma Purana. A person who is engaged in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness is understood to be doing the best service to the whole world and to be pleasing everyone in the world. In addition to the human society, he is pleasing even the trees and animals because they also become attracted to such a movement. Further, a person engaged in Krishna consciousness, acting in devotional service, can develop all the good qualities. Yasyasya bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sarvair gune samasate suraha harau abhaktasya kuto mahad guna. So the person who is engaged in akinchana bhagavati bhakti, yasyasya bhakti bhagavati akinchana, unalloyed devotional service, such a person develops all the good qualities that are generally found in devatas. So if a person introduces another person to Krishna consciousness, then that person will also develop. There are so many institutions that we see here, mental health care institution. Today, it's a very big issue in the society. Mental health is the number one problem today, not just physical health, not just cancer or diabetes or hypertension, but mental health is the number one problem today in the world. And these are caused by shortcomings in our characteristic and the anxiety that is present, upadhrita, as because of the circumstances around us. But a person who develops unalloyed devotional service will develop automatically all the good qualities of demigods, and certainly demigods do not go into depression. My dear king, Sukadeva Goswami says, persons who have unflinching faith in Krishna and are without any duplicity, okay, that is the same verse. For example, a Krishna conscious boy, even if he is not very well educated by university standard, can immediately give up illicit sex life, gambling, meat eating, intoxication. Whereas those who are not in Krishna consciousness, although they're highly educated, are often drunkards, meat eaters, sex mongers, and gamblers. You see this? See how the person gets transformed and what is beneficial for the society. See, a person whom you may help outwardly, he's not going to give up meat eating, he's not going to give up gambling or alcoholism, nothing. So even if today he does not have the means for these things, as soon as some money comes, he will start indulging in those things. So you may find somebody on the street and you may think, poor guy, he is not indulging in alcohol. Whatever food we give, he eats. That is because he doesn't have the means. The moment you start giving him some job or some work and he gets some money, immediately he'll start. So this is Prabhupada says, this is what happens in the US. Why people have stopped going to churches? Because they have become more opulent. The moment some opulence comes, the moment some amount of wealth comes, people forget God consciousness, because underlying Krishna consciousness is not there. They're just waiting for some material benediction. As soon as it comes, it is forgotten. One who is not Krishna conscious, in Krishna consciousness, usually cannot sit silently even for half an hour. The yoga system teaches that if you become silent, you will realize that you are God. This system may be all right for materialistic persons, but how long will they be able to keep themselves silent? Artificially, they may sit down for so-called meditation, but immediately after the yogic performance, they will engage again themselves in such activities as illicit sex life, gambling, meat eating, and so many other nonsensical things. But a Krishna conscious person gradually elevates himself without endeavoring for the so-called silent meditation. Because he's engaged in Krishna consciousness, he automatically gives up all this nonsense and develops a high character. One develops the highest character by becoming pure devotee of Krishna. Conclusion is that no one can truly have any good qualities if he is lacking in Krishna consciousness. So this Krishna consciousness movement, which is broadcast from Srila Prabhupada's temple, India Heritage Foundation, Boston, is meant for the highest welfare of all the living entities. So I would like to bring this to your attention, which is the theme of today's verse: highest welfare work, universal welfare work, and encourage all of us. These verses provide us enthusiasm and determination and a sense of purpose in broadcasting the message of Krishna, the purports of Srila Prabhupada that give us this understanding about the message of Krishna, and the chanting of the holy names, which is the purpose of the temple that we are establishing. So with that, I'll stop and see if you have any questions. Anand? Anand Prabhuji?
No question, Prabhuji.
No question. Ankit, are you, Anand, you are convinced? Are you convinced that propagating the holy name, propagating Krishna consciousness is the highest welfare work?
Yes.
Okay. So then we should all take efforts. So those who are convinced like this, our actions should be consistent with that, which means, because what is the use of this life if Jivan Sarthaka Kare Paropakara? The persons who are especially of Indian origin, Indian heritage, it is our solemn duty to propagate, to help others, to actually help others. That is our duty. It is being told by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Bharata Bhumi, what is that verse? Janma hoite hoila jar. Janma sarthaka kare karo paropakara. So it is our duty to help others, and so we should engage and spend time in this. Yes, Prabhu. You're saying something?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, you have explained that even the holy name is not connected. Like it is like uh, like you have just given the example of Ra and Ma. So even then it is not connected together. Then also it is benefited. So Prabhu, I just want to understand this.
This is the statement of Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur, no ordinary person. Haridas Thakur, you know how Bhishma Dev quit his body when he wanted to quit? He had this benediction, right? He could quit his body whenever he wanted.
Yes.
Haridas Thakur, when he became very old, aged, once when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked him, how are you doing? He says, I'm doing all right. But I know that sooner or later, Lord, so Haridas Thakur is telling Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, sooner or later, you will wind up your pastimes. Please don't let me see that. I cannot witness that. Before that, please let me quit my body, seeing your beautiful moonlight face. And then after that, a few days later, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is sitting there and Haridas Thakur is sitting in front of him. Everybody is chanting holy name, chanting and doing kirtan, loud kirtan. And Haridas Thakur is also singing and he's chanting the holy name. And he takes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's foot, keeps it on his heart like this, and looks at the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's face, and he gives up his body right in front of everyone, just like that. That's how he passes. Haridas Thakur is such an exalted devotee that what he says is non-different from Vedas, from perfect highest knowledge, non-different from Krishna's message. So he's saying this, that is the power of the holy name. Now, that doesn't mean that we start introducing sounds between our chanting. That's not the import. This showing the power of the holy name. It's just such a power that, and we sometimes don't realize because we don't have faith in that holy name can have such a transformative effect. Because we believe that actually food, shelter, education, money, this is welfare. And because prasadam is food, therefore sometimes we are open to distribution of prasadam, because after all prasadam is food. Actually we believe food is required. But because of some little bit of faith in prasadam, we give prasadam. But actually, holy name is the highest. Krishna consciousness should be imparted. And Krishna consciousness does not come because there is a obstacle in the form of sinful activities. Right? And to purify the soul, to purify the heart, only Hare Krishna mantra chanting can purify. So prasadam acts wonderfully. So there is no doubt about it. But it has to be complemented by chanting of the holy names. And people are not in a state of mind to chant. At least they can hear. That is the reason why we broadcast the kirtan. Any other questions? Okay. No other questions. We'll stop here. All of you, please come on your camera. Raise your hands. People are yet to come on the camera, so I'm just giving it a little bit time. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Grantra Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.